Good evening, listeners. My name is EveningWhisperTales. Tonight, I'll be telling you some scary horror stories to help you relax and fall asleep. If you enjoy this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Now, let's begin our evening together. Story 1. My daughter was standing in the middle of the road. Continued. I washed the driveway with the hose. I don't know why. The footprints bothered me too much to leave them there. Long, narrow impressions filled with rainwater, darker than the rest of the concrete. The drag marks beside them were worse. 2 parallel grooves that ran from the curb almost to the garage door, like something heavy had been pulled along on blunt edges. My daughter watched from the porch wrapped in a blanket. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't what?" "Erase it." I froze. "Why?" "It comes back faster when you erase it." I shut the hose off. The water pooled around the prints but didn't fill them in the way it should have. The grooves stayed deep, as if the driveway remembered being pressed that way. Inside, she refused breakfast, refused to sit with her back to windows, refused to be alone. When I drove her to school, she stared into the side mirrors the entire time. "Do you see it?" I asked. She shook her head. "It's being polite today." "What does that mean?" "It's letting us go first." I didn't like that answer. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a call from the school. Nothing came. When I got home, the garage door was open. I knew I'd closed it. I walked inside slowly. The house was quiet in that hollow midday way when nobody else is home. Sunlight spilled across the floor. Dust floated. On the kitchen counter sat a wet leaf. Just one, brown, long stem. We didn't have trees near the driveway. That night the driveway was clean. No prints, no grooves, just smooth concrete. At 1:12 a.m., my daughter screamed. I ran into her room. She was standing in the middle of it, pointing at the window. "It parked." "What parked?" "That." I pulled the curtain back. Nothing, street empty. She shook her head violently. "You can't see it unless it's between blinks." My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It learned how headlights work. Story 2. The man who followed our bus. The bus stop sat at the corner under a broken street lamp that flickered even when the night was calm. I rode that route every morning. Same people, same bench, same cracked sidewalk. The man wasn't part of the routine. He stood across the street the first day wearing a long coat even though it was warm. Hands hanging limp at his sides, watching the bus shelter without blinking. Didn't look at traffic, didn't check a phone, just stared. The next morning he was closer, right at the edge of the crosswalk, still not moving. On the third morning he stood behind the shelter, so close I could see him reflected faintly in the plexiglass panel behind the bench. I pretended not to notice. The bus pulled up, doors hissed open. When I got on, the driver glanced into the mirror and frowned. Thought someone else and it was getting on. "Who?" "That guy standing behind you." I turned. The sidewalk was empty. That night I got a text from an unknown number. "You dropped something." I replied, "Who is this?" A photo came back. Me, standing at the bus stop that morning. Taken from behind, the shelter, the street lamp, the empty space where the man had been, except in the photo, he was standing inches behind me. Story 3. The room my apartment didn't have. The listing said 2 bedrooms. I checked, I measured, I unpacked. There were 2 for 6 months. Then I came home one evening and found a door at the end of the hallway where the wall had been. Same paint, same trim, same baseboards, like it had always been part of the unit. I stood there holding my grocery bags for a full minute before moving. The door was locked, no peephole, no number, just a brass knob polished from years of hands. I called the landlord. He laughed. "That's your storage room." "I don't have one." "You do now." When I opened it, the smell hit first. Cold air, concrete, wet dust. The room was narrow, longer than the building should allow, bare bulb hanging from a cord. The floor sloped downward slightly. Nothing inside, no shelves, no boxes, no pipes, just scuffed footprints in the dust, bare, leading toward the far wall, and stopping, like whoever made them had simply sunk. Story 4, the car that kept driving past our house. It started subtle enough that I didn't register it the first few nights. Headlights through the curtains around midnight. Slow, lingering. Not the quick sweep of someone passing by, but the deliberate crawl of a car that had eased off the gas. I only noticed on the 4th night because I was already awake. The glow slid across the living room wall and stopped, stayed, long enough that I stood and peeked through the blinds. A sedan idled at the curb, dark, no interior light, no visible driver. I waited 30 seconds, a minute. Then it rolled forward, disappeared down the street. The next night it came back. Same time, same slow approach, same pause. This time I stepped onto the porch. The car sped up immediately, like it hadn't expected me to look. I told my wife. She shrugged it off. Probably a neighbor's guest, delivery driver, someone lost. The 3rd night after that, I was in the kitchen when my daughter whispered, "Daddy, that car came back." I walked to the window. It wasn't at the curb, it was halfway up the driveway. Engine off, headlights off, just sitting. When I opened the door, the dome light flickered on. The driver's seat was empty, the passenger seat too. The back was dark, too dark, like the interior swallowed porch light instead of reflecting it. I stepped closer. The radio turned on. Static. A low clicking sound started in the trunk, like someone knocking from the inside. I backed up. The headlights snapped on, blinding, and the car rolled backward on its own. Story 5. The neighbors who never brought furniture. They moved in on a Tuesday. No moving truck, no vans, just a sedan and an SUV. They parked and went inside. That was it. No couch, no mattress, no boxes. Days passed. Lights came on at night. No blinds, no silhouettes, just empty rooms glowing yellow. I introduced myself when I caught the man outside. "Just moved in." He nodded, didn't offer his name, didn't shake my hand. "You need anything?" "No." He went back inside. Still no furniture. Weeks passed. Packages arrived. They carried them in. Never took trash out. Never wheeled bins to the curb. I asked another neighbor. She frowned. "They live there?" One night I noticed something. Shadows, not matching the rooms. Too tall. Too many. The windows stayed empty. The shadows moved. Story 6. The stairwell that went too far down. I lived on the 3rd floor. Always had. Every stairwell in the building ended after 2 flights. Fire code. Simple. Until I took the wrong one after working late. I wasn't paying attention, just walking down 1 floor, 2, 3, 4. I stopped. I stared at the number stenciled on the wall. That wasn't right. I went down another. The air was colder. Lights buzzed louder. The concrete smelled damp. Another. My phone lost signal. Another. The door at the bottom was open. Blackness beyond. And the stairwell kept going. Story 7. The man who left his shoes on our porch. I noticed them when I went out to get the newspaper. A pair of men's shoes sat neatly beside the welcome mat. brown leather, polished, laced, pointed toward the front door. They weren't mine. My wife's boots were inside. We didn't have guests the night before. I looked up and down the street, empty, quiet, no cars idling, no people walking dogs, just morning sun and dew on lawns. I nudged the shoes with my foot. Cold, heavy, like someone had just taken them off. I carried them inside and set them by the door, meaning to toss them later. By noon they were gone. I assumed my wife had moved them. She hadn't. The next morning they were back. Same spot, same angle, pointing at the door. I left them outside this time. That night I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, dragging. I didn't look. In the morning the shoes were inside the foyer. Wet. Mud pooled around them. There were no footprints, just the shoes, facing the hallway. Story 8. The woman who kept calling. My phone. The calls started at midnight. Unknown number. No voicemail. Just silence when I answered. Breathing. Too close. Too slow. I blocked the number. It called from a new one, then another, then from my own. Caller ID. Me. I didn't answer that one. A voicemail appeared anyway. My voice whispered, "Don't go into the bathroom." I checked. The light was on. Hadn't left it on. Steam fogged the mirror, like someone had just showered. Story 9. The playground that didn't close. The park sign said it closed at dusk. Everyone knew that. Lights shut off, gates locked, swings chained. I walked my dog past it at 11 p.m. and froze. Kids were playing, no lights, just silhouettes moving across the equipment, running, climbing, laughing softly. The gate hung open, the swing creaked. I stepped closer. "Hey!" I called. They stopped, all at once, turned, stared. Their faces didn't catch moonlight, just smooth dark shapes. One whispered, "It's too old to climb." The swing started moving again, by itself. Story 10. The campground that didn't have an exit. We chose the campground because it was supposed to be simple. One road in, one road out, lake in the center, ranger station near the gate. It was the kind of place families brought RVs and kids rode bikes in circles until sunset. 5 of us went. Me, my girlfriend Lila, my cousin Aaron, his wife Jess, and her younger brother Owen, who had never been camping before and kept asking where the bathrooms were. Everything was normal the first night. Campfire smoke hung low in the trees. Someone down the loop played music too loud. Kids ran past with glow sticks, and the lake reflected orange streaks of flame from dozens of little fires along the shore. The second day was when the sign started bothering me. On our walk to the bathhouse, we passed the wooden post that marked our loop. Loop C, sites 41 to 58. When we came back, it read, Loop C, sites 41 to 58. Keep driving. I stopped. Jess laughed. That wasn't there before. Aaron leaned in. Probably graffiti. But the extra words weren't spray paint. They were carved into the wood, fresh and pale against the darker grain. We told the ranger at the front gate. He stared at the sign too long before shrugging and saying he'd check it out. That evening, Owen didn't want to swim in the lake anymore. He stood on the dock watching the water instead of jumping in. "There's something under there," he said. Aaron splashed him. "Fish." Owen shook his head, not moving like fish. Jess pulled him back when he got too close to the edge. After dark, the campfire crackled lower than usual. The forest felt thicker, like the trees had leaned inward. Lila swore she heard footsteps circling the tents, but every time we shined a flashlight, there is nothing between the trunks except shadow and underbrush. When I went to throw out trash, I realized the dumpster area had moved. It was farther down the road than it had been that morning, past 2 extra loops I didn't remember existing. New numbered posts stood along the road, each one hammered into the dirt crookedly, the numbers climbing higher than made sense. I dumped the bag and hurried back. Aaron was arguing with Jess. She wanted to leave in the morning. Owen sat by the fire rubbing his arms. "They changed the map," he said quietly. "What map?" Lila asked. "The one by the bathrooms." I checked later. The board still stood there, but the campground diagram had been redrawn with black marker, the loop spiraling inward toward the lake instead of branching outward. Someone had crossed out the exit road and scribbled "closed for maintenance" across it. Sometime after midnight, a car drove past our site, then another, then another. Headlights swept through the trees, slow and deliberate, even though this loop was supposed to be a dead end. Aaron unzipped his tent and stepped out. "Who keeps driving through here?" The road beyond our fire no longer curved away toward the gate. It ran straight into the trees. Lila grabbed my arm. "It didn't do that," Owen whispered. "That's the new way." Jess demanded we leave immediately. We packed with flashlights shaking in our hands. When Aaron turned the key in his SUV, the dashboard lit up, but the engine didn't catch. My truck did the same. So did Jess's sedan. 3 cars, dead. From the lake came a sound like water being displaced by something large and careful. Not splashing, rising. We ran. Down the road that wasn't right anymore. Past numbered posts that kept repeating the same 3 digits. Past campsites that were set up but empty. Chairs still facing cold fire pits. Tents zipped shut as if people had left them in a hurry. The ranger station lights were on when we reached it. The building was open, empty, maps torn off the walls, coffee still warm in a paper cup on the counter. Outside, the gate was gone. Just trees, thick, unbroken, and tire tracks leading deeper into the forest. Story 11, the road trip that never reached the motel. There were 6 of us in the van, packed tight with coolers, backpacks, sleeping bags, and the kind of road trip optimism you only have before anything goes wrong. Tyler was driving because he trusted himself more at night. Jenna rode shotgun with the map app open, and the rest of us rotated between napping and arguing over playlists in the back. We were supposed to reach the motel before midnight. Cheap place off the highway. Neon sign shaped like a cactus. 24-hour desk. Breakfast that was mostly sugar. At 11:17, Jenna frowned at her phone. Why did it reroute? Tyler didn't look away from the road. Construction. It didn't say that before. The highway narrowed into 2 lanes and then 1. The forest thickened on both sides, tall pines leaning inward until the sky felt like a thin ribbon above us. The radio lost signal and replaced music with static no matter which station we picked. We passed the same green sign twice. Motel, 18 miles. The second time, Tyler slowed. "I swear we already..." "Different one," someone said, but nobody sounded sure. 10 minutes later it came again. Same bullet holes, same crooked post, same peeling paint. Jenna zoomed out on the map. The blue line kept stretching forward. The destination pin didn't get closer. When we tried to call the motel, the phone rang once and dropped. Then again, straight to voicemail. Mia in the back pointed out the window. There's been a truck behind us for a while. Headlights hovered in the distance just far enough that we couldn't make out a grill. They never passed, never fell back. Every curve we took, they mirrored perfectly. Tyler sped up. They stayed the same distance away. Jenna whispered, That's not how headlights work. We reached a crossroads that wasn't on the map. No lights, no buildings, just 4 dark roads and a handmade sign nailed to a tree that said, "Stay on Main," even though there hadn't been a main road in miles. Tyler picked the straight one. The headlights behind us turned with us. A mile later, the gas light blinked on. Impossible. We'd filled up less than an hour earlier. Jenna checked her phone again and swallowed. The motel just moved. What do you mean? The pin's farther now. The van began to smell faintly metallic, like hot brakes or pennies. Wind pressed against the windows even though the trees were still. We passed a rest stop, lights on, bathroom building, vending machines glowing. Relief flooded the van. Tyler pulled in. The lot was empty, no cars, no trucks. The soda machine hummed. The bathroom doors were propped open. Inside, the sinks were wet and the hand dryers warm, like people had just left. Mia looked at the map posted on the wall. This doesn't have an exit. The forest around the rest stop was too close to the pavement, branches creeping right up to the asphalt. Tyler tried to start the van again. It hesitated, coughed, then turned over. We pulled out fast. The headlights behind us were already waiting on the road, closer now, and the green sign appeared again ahead. Motel 18 MI. Underneath, scratched into the metal, "You are almost there." Story 12. The hike that didn't stay on the trail. We went out with 12 people, which was probably the only reason none of us panicked at first. Big group, bright backpacks, loud jokes, trail mix being passed around, phones out for pictures every 10 minutes. It was supposed to be a simple half-day hike through a state park loop trail that wound up to an overlook and back down toward the parking lot. Mark had printed the map. Olivia brought a first aid kit. Someone brought a speaker clipped to their pack that played low music until a ranger asked us to turn it off near the trailhead. The trail was wide and packed dirt with wooden markers every quarter mile. Birds chirped, sunlight filtered through the leaves, and kids from another group passed us going the opposite direction. An hour in, the wooden markers started changing. Instead of distance numbers, the next one just said, "Keep left," carved into the plank. Nobody thought much of it. Trails split all the time. The next marker said the same thing, then the one after that. Mark checked the map and frowned. The overlook wasn't left, it was straight. We followed straight anyway. 10 minutes later, we crossed a shallow stream over stepping stones and the trail narrowed into something more like a footpath. The wooden posts vanished. Orange ribbon was tied to branches instead. Fresh, still bright. That should have bothered us more. We heard shouting ahead and thought it was another group until we rounded a bend and found a couple standing in the middle of the trail, arguing with the ranger. The ranger kept pointing back the way we'd come and shaking his head. "We just came from there," the woman insisted. The ranger's uniform looked old, the badge scratched dull. "That's not the trail. That's where we walked." He stared past her at us and said, "You shouldn't be here yet." Olivia asked what he meant. Wexham didn't answer. He just walked off into the trees instead of down the path. The speaker in our group crackled and died. Phones lost bars. The air cooled even though the sun stayed bright. We reached a clearing that wasn't on the map, ringed by birches that were too evenly spaced. In the middle stood a trail board with the new laminated map pinned to it. All the paths spiraled. No straight lines, no parking lot, no trailhead, just loops feeding into a dark green center, marked Watershed restricted. When Mark tried to take a photo, the screen froze. Behind us, the path we'd used to enter the clearing had vanished into brush. Not blocked, overgrown, like it hadn't been walked in years. Someone said we should backtrack. Someone else said we already were. We started walking anyway and came out into a picnic area full of tables and grills and bathrooms that looked recently cleaned. No cars, no people. A half-burned bag of charcoal sat next to one grill, still warm to the touch. A child's shoe lay under one bench. Mark swore he heard something moving in the trees that kept pace with us no matter how fast we walked. When we reached another trail board, it showed our current location with a red dot. The dot was nowhere near the edge. It was drifting inward. Story 12, the hike that didn't stay on the trail, continued. Nobody liked that red dot. Mark tapped the laminated map with his knuckle like he might respond. The plastic was warm from the sun, but the board itself felt strangely cold in the shade of the trees. "That thing's wrong," he said. "We haven't been walking in circles." Jenna shook her head. "We've been heading downhill for at least 20 minutes. Olivia checked her step counter. "We've gone almost 3 miles since the stream." The map didn't care. Every arrow pointed inward. Every loop tightened toward the same green center. Someone in the back muttered, "What's watershed restricted even mean?" Before anyone could answer, one of the younger guys, Caleb I think, noticed something else. "There are names on this." We leaned closer. Tiny labels had been printed along some of the side paths, not trail names, dates, times, and under those, first names. Half of them were smudged, half of them were scratched out. One of them wasn't. "Mark," he stared at it. "That's not funny." Olivia scanned the others. "That one says Jenna." Jenna backed away from the board. "Nope, nope." The trees around the clearing were too straight, too evenly spaced, no undergrowth between trunks. Just leaf litter pressed flat as if a lot of feet had passed through recently. 12 people standing there suddenly felt very small. We picked a direction that pointed outward on the map and started walking fast enough that conversation thinned out. Packs shifted, boots scraped gravel that turned back into dirt again too quickly. The air smelled wetter now, like mud and standing water, even though the ground stayed dry. After 10 minutes, Aaron, who'd been counting people out of nervous habit, swore under his breath. "What? I thought we had 12. We do." "No, I counted 11. Everyone stopped. Heads turned. We counted. Still 12. Aaron flushed. "Never mind." 2 minutes later, he said it again. "I swear someone's walking where there isn't room." "What does that mean?" He pointed behind us at the trail. It was narrow enough that we should have been single file. We were. But the leaves along both edges were flattened wider than our boots had touched, like something else had been keeping pace just off the path. We hit another stream. Wider this time, slow water, dark, no stepping stones, just a fallen tree acting as a bridge. The bark was wet and slick. Half of us crossed before Jenna froze mid-step. "There's something under it." Mark crouched and leaned out over the water. Fish, rocks. Then a pale shape drifted upward and pressed against the underside of the log. Not floating, holding. The water around it didn't ripple. Jenna scrambled back. The shape slid away beneath the surface. Caleb whispered, "Was that skin?" Nobody answered. We crossed anyway, because staying felt worse. On the other side, the forest changed. No birds, no wind, just the sound of our boots and our breathing and something farther away that moved when we did. We came to a wooden platform overlooking a marsh. Railings, binocular stand, signboard. The binoculars were missing. The sign read, "Observation area. Please remain in group." Someone laughed weakly. "That wasn't there before." Mark said. There wasn't a marsh on the map either. The reeds shifted, not from breeze, from something pushing through them slowly, parallel to the boardwalk, matching our direction. We didn't wait to see what it was. We ran. The trail broke apart into 3 branches that all looked equally used. Mark picked the middle. It curved again, and dumped us right back into the clearing. Same board, same map, same red dot, closer to the center now. Olivia swallowed. We didn't turn. Behind us, new names had appeared on the laminated sheet. One of them was Aaron, and he was standing right next to me. Story 13, the ferry that didn't dock. We only took the ferry because the bridge was closed. Construction, accident is something vague on the radio that sounded temporary enough not to worry about. 12 of us piled into 2 cars, circled around the bay, and joined the line at the terminal just before sunset, watching gulls fight over scraps near the water while engines idled. The schedule board said the crossing took 20 minutes. That felt reasonable. The ferry itself looked older than the terminal, white paint peeling at the railings, name half rusted along the hull. A bored attendant waved us forward and scanned our tickets without really looking at them. We parked nose to nose inside the belly of the boat and headed upstairs with everyone else. Families leaned on railings. A biker group clustered near the snack bar. 2 fishermen compared photos on a phone. When the ferry pulled away, the shoreline slid back the way it should, docks shrinking, lights stretching into long streaks on the water. Halfway across, Tyler noticed the fog. It rolled in low, thick enough that you couldn't tell where the ocean ended and the sky started. "Did the forecast say anything about that?" he asked. Jenna shook her head. The captain came on the loudspeaker and said something about reduced visibility, but that the crossing would continue. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The shoreline never appeared, just gray, water slapping softly against steel. A crew member walked by and checked a door we hadn't noticed before, one that led farther forward than the public deck. He didn't say anything when we asked if everything was okay. The fog got louder. That sounds ridiculous, but it's the only way to describe it. Like a distant surf that wasn't tied to waves. One of the fishermen muttered that his GPS still showed them in the middle of the bay. Another passenger pointed out that the sun hadn't moved. It hung low and orange, smeared against the fog like it was painted on. Our phones all lost service within a minute of each other. Then the loudspeaker clicked again. This time the voice sounded closer, not echoing through the deck speakers, almost like someone was standing behind us talking into a mic. "We will be arriving shortly." Nobody liked the way he said shortly. The ferry slowed. Engines dropped to a low thrum. Everyone crowded the railings, peering into the fog. The water below wasn't dark anymore. It was pale, milky, like silt had risen from the bottom. Shapes slid beneath the surface, long ones, wide ones, moving in parallel. Someone shouted for a crew member. Another person started filming. The phone screen glitched and shut off. A bell rang somewhere below deck. Not the normal docking bell. Slower, hollow, like a buoy in deep water. The ferry drifted, then bumped, not against a dock, against something soft enough that the whole boat shuddered instead of clanking. The fog thinned just enough to show a wall. Not concrete, not wood, curving, pale, wet, tall enough that we couldn't see the top, pressing against the hull like a shoreline that had decided to lean back. And then the ferry horn blared, long, panicked, not automated, manual. Someone on the bridge was leaning on it. The loudspeaker crackled. "Remain calm." The fog swallowed the bow again, and the engines cut. Story 14, the town that wasn't on the highway map. We only stopped because the gaslight came on at the same time in both cars. That shouldn't have been possible. We'd filled up together less than an hour earlier, convoy style, waving through windows and joking about who was going to run out first. Then both dashboards chimed within 10 seconds. Amber icons, low fuel. Tyler slowed and rolled down his window. "Did anyone else's?" "Yeah," Jenna called from the passenger seat of the second car. The highway was empty, straight and dark except for a glow ahead that looked like a rest stop or exit sign. When we reached it, there was no exit number, just a hand-painted board bolted to 2 posts. Fuel, food, rooms. An arrow pointed off the road. We hesitated, then turned. The side road dipped and twisted through low trees before opening into a cluster of buildings arranged around a single wide intersection. A gas station with bright fluorescent lights. A diner with a glowing red sign. A motel that looked new enough to still smell like lumber. No street names, no traffic lights, no people visible. We parked by the pumps. The numbers on the price board were blank, just black panels. The pump handles were warm, as if someone had just used them. A man stepped out of the station wearing a reflective vest that didn't reflect properly in the headlights. "You're lucky," he said. "Came in before close." Jenna frowned. "What time is it?" He smiled. "Almost." Tyler tried to pay at the pump. Screen dead. The man gestured inside. We split up, which was mistake number 1. 2 of us went with Tyler into the station while the rest drifted toward the diner. Inside, the shelves were stocked but dusty. Candy bars faded, bottles of soda whose labels showed brands I didn't recognize. The clerk behind the counter wasn't the same man. This one was older, too still. He rang Tyler up before anything was on the counter. "That'll be 32, he said. "For what?" "For the stop." The receipt printed anyway. Long, too long, covered in itemized lines that didn't make sense. Entry, FE. Occupants, 6. Vehicles, 2. Time, allotment, pending. Outside, Jenna knocked on the window and pointed at the road. The highway was gone. Just trees where it should have been. The reflective vest man stood by our cars now, counting the doors. Story 15, the ski lift that didn't come back down. We only rode it because the line was short. That was the logic. Late afternoon, one more run before sunset. Cold air already settling into our jackets while the mountain glowed pink and gold under the sinking sun. 8 of us squeezed onto 2 chairs. Me, Tyler, Jenna, Marco on the first. Lila, Chris, Owen, and Sarah on the second, laughing about how stiff we'd be tomorrow and whether the lodge would still be serving chili. The lift operator waved us through without looking up. The chairs jerked forward and carried us off the ground. Everything felt normal for the first few minutes. Snow-dusted pines rolled by below, skiers cutting thin white lines down open slopes, the hum of the cable vibrating faintly through the metal bar across our laps. Then the chairs ahead of us disappeared into a patch of fog near the upper ridge. That wasn't unusual either. Mountain weather changes fast. Marco pointed up. That cloud wasn't there before. The lift kept climbing. The slope beneath us steepened, trees thinned, rock poked through snow. The lodge at the top should have been visible by now. It wasn't. Jenna squinted at her phone. No signal. Chris shouted back from the chair behind us that his had dropped too. The fog swallowed the next tower. The cable hummed louder, then didn't. The sound flattened, like the vibration was being dampened. Our chair rolled through the fog and the world turned white. Sound softened. Snow stopped falling. Wind vanished. The chair ahead of us was gone. Not farther up. Gone. The cable continued upward into nothing. Tyler leaned forward. Did they stop it? It didn't feel stopped. It felt redirected. We drifted out of the fog into clear air again, but the ridge was wrong. No lodge, no buildings, no trail markers, just bare rock and snowdrifts shaped like dunes, and beyond that, a second ridge line, higher and farther. The lift kept going. Owen twisted around and shouted, "Guys!" We followed his gaze. Below us was not the slope we'd crossed earlier. It was a forested valley none of us recognized, trees packed too tightly, shadows pooling between them even though the sun was still visible above. The chair slowed, stopped, swung gently, 8 people dangling over something unfamiliar and very deep. A loudspeaker crackled somewhere above, not from the towers, from the cable itself. "We will unload shortly," Jenna whispered. "Unload where?" Ahead, in the empty air, a platform began to rise, not from the mountain, from below the tree line. Steel beams and wooden planks, emerging like an elevator for people who had never planned to step back onto land, and the cable creaked as if it was adjusting its route, downward toward the forest. Story 16, the concert that didn't end. We arrived late and were grateful for it. The parking lot was half full, the opening act already finishing, the summer air thick with grilled food and beer, and that electric hum that hangs over big outdoor venues. 12 of us poured out of 2 SUVs, laughing, arguing about merch prices, trying to remember which songs we hoped they'd play. The stage lights washed the crowd in purple and blue while roadies swapped equipment. When the headliner came out, the place exploded, bass thumped through our chests. Screens flared, phones went up everywhere. For the first hour, everything was perfect. Then Tyler noticed the time. He leaned over and shouted in my ear, "Didn't they start at 8?" I nodded. "It's almost midnight." The band launched into another song, then another. No encore break, no goodbye, just seamless transitions like they'd never planned to stop. Jenna checked her phone. No bars. Marco pulled his up too. Same thing. When they finished a song, the crowd didn't cheer. They just kept standing, facing forward, arms down, like they were waiting for instructions. Zara waved at a group near the barricade. They didn't turn. Lights swept across the audience and froze on the center section. Nobody blinked. Chris muttered, "That's creepy." The screens flickered and showed a wide shot of the crowd. It took me a second to realize we weren't on it. The camera panned past our section like there was empty space there. We tried to push toward an aisle. The people around us didn't resist. They just didn't move. Bodies packed tight, warm and breathing but unresponsive. Eyes locked on the stage. Security guards lined the edges of the pit, not moving either, not watching the crowd. Watching the exits, Tyler grabbed one. "Hey, we need to get out." The guard's earpiece crackled. He didn't answer. The band started a new song, slower, lower. The bass line felt wrong, too deep, like it wasn't coming from speakers, like it was coming from underground. The screens changed, no longer showing the band. Now they showed overhead shots of the venue, parking lot, highway, darkness beyond. The camera zoomed out farther than a drone should be able to go, past the lights, past the roads, into forest, water, nothing. Then the image snapped back to the stage, but the band had stopped playing. They were standing perfectly still, instruments humming. The lead singer leaned into the mic. "We're going to take a short break." Nobody cheered. "We need everyone to remain where they are." That was when the gates closed. Metal clanged, all of them at once. Story 17, the airport that delayed every flight. We didn't even check the board at first. There were 15 of us spread across 2 rows of plastic seats near Gate 47, killing time before a late-night departure, sharing fries from paper cartons and half-watching whatever muted news loop played above the bar. The terminal hummed the way airports always do, rolling suitcases, overhead announcements, tired laughter from people trying to stretch vacations a little longer. Then the first delay notice popped up. Flight 828 delayed. No time, just the word. Jenna nudged Tyler and pointed. He shrugged. Weather. 5 minutes later, every screen on the wall changed. All of them, every gate, every airline. Delayed, no departure times, no destinations. Just that single word filling blue panels from one end of the concourse to the other. A ripple of unease ran through the waiting area. People checked phones. A man in a suit refreshed his email over and over. A woman walked up to the counter and leaned on the plexiglass to talk to the gate. "Agent." The agent stared at her monitor and didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even nod. The woman waved. Nothing. Someone shouted down the terminal, asking what was going on. No answer. The intercom crackled overhead. "Attention passengers." Static swallowed the rest. Then the same message repeated and again, never finishing. Marco pointed toward the windows. The runway lights were still on, but no planes were moving, none taxiing, none landing, none taking off. Just lines of white and blue glowing into the distance. Tyler stood. "I'm going to ask somebody." He walked to the coffee stand. The barista was mid-pour, coffee streaming into a cup that had already overflowed. Liquid pooled on the counter and dripped onto the floor. She didn't notice, didn't react, just kept pouring. Behind her, the espresso machine screamed. Jenna whispered, "That can't be good." We spread out, trying to talk to staff at different counters. Same thing. Frozen agents, screens scrolling behind them, printers spitting blank boarding passes onto the floor. The smell of burnt coffee and overheated electronics thickened the air. Security guards stood near the corridor to baggage claim, not blocking it, facing it, hands folded, watching something farther down the hall. Chris leaned close to me. "Why aren't they watching people?" A child started crying near gate 51, then another, then 3 more. The crying didn't spread like normal. It synchronized. Same pitch, same rhythm. Parents tried to pick them up. The kids didn't fight, didn't cling, just kept staring past their parents' shoulders toward the long glass hallway that led to customs. We finally followed their gaze. At the far end of the terminal, the automatic doors kept opening and closing and opening again. No one walked through. Each time they slid apart, cold night air spilled into the building, along with a low mechanical sound that didn't come from the motors, more like something breathing through them. Story 18, the apartment showing that didn't end. We weren't even planning to tour that building. Our realtor only added it because we had time to kill before dinner. and it was close to the cafe where half of us had already decided we were going to eat afterward. 7 of us crammed into 2 cars and followed her through a quiet residential area where the streetlights were just coming on. The building looked normal enough. 4 stories, brick exterior, banner draped over the entrance that read, "Open House Today" in curling blue letters. Inside smelled like fresh paint and lemon cleaner. A folding table sat in the lobby with flyers stacked neatly in rows, and a bowl of wrapped candies no one touched. "Take any floor you want," the realtor said cheerfully. "I'll meet you upstairs." We split into pairs and trios and wandered. The stairwell echoed in that hollow apartment building way, every footstep carrying too far. On the 2nd floor, I noticed something odd immediately. The unit numbers didn't go in order. I frowned but kept walking. The apartment itself was staged beautifully. Neutral couches, fake plants, stock photos in frames. The kind of place that looked like nobody had ever actually lived there. In the bathroom, the mirror was fogged. No one had run water. The sink was dry. I wiped it with my sleeve. Clear. When I stepped back, the fog returned, thicker, from the center outward, like breath. In the bedroom closet, I heard voices through the wall, not muffled enough to be neighbors, more like they were standing inside the drywall. 2 women arguing, a man laughing, someone shushing them. I pressed my ear closer. The voices stopped. Down the hall, Jenna poked her head out of another unit. "Did you hear that?" Before I could answer, the realtor's voice echoed up from below. "2nd floor done already." No one had told her we're finished. We regrouped by the stairwell. Everyone had something small to report. Warm air vents, lights turning on by themselves, a unit that had a fridge humming but no cord plugged into the outlet. Tyler tried the elevator. Doors open, no buttons lit. Inside was darker than the lobby. He backed out. Stairs. We went up to the 3rd floor. Same layout, same furniture, same fake plants in the same corners, same stock photos on the walls, even the same crooked pillow on the same couch. "This is staged weird," Marco muttered. In one apartment the TV was on, static, volume low. When Jenna muted it, the remote didn't work. The TV did, it shut itself off. The hallway behind us creaked. Footsteps, more than one set, slow, from both directions. Sarah whispered, "We didn't come up with that many people, right?" The stairwell door we'd used earlier was gone, just a blank stretch of wall where it should have been. Story 19, the swimming, lake, that closed. Too late. We got there just before sunset, which in hindsight was the first mistake. The park sign said the lake closed at dusk, but the ranger at the gate barely looked up when we asked. 10 of us rolled in with towels, coolers, folding chairs, speakers, the whole late summer routine, laughing about how the water would probably be freezing and whether anyone was brave enough to jump in first. The beach was half empty, a few families packing up, 2 teenagers skipping stones, a couple sitting on the dock with their feet in the water. We set up near the tree line while the sun dipped behind the hills, turning the surface of the lake copper. Tyler and Marco were the first in, wading out and daring everyone else to follow. Jenna hovered near the edge, swearing something brushed her ankle before she'd even stepped past her calves. Probably weeds. The water was warmer than expected. That should have been another warning. As it got darker, the families left. The teenagers disappeared. The couple on the dock stayed, didn't move, didn't talk, just sat there watching the water. Someone turned on a lantern. Light rippled across the surface. No bugs gathered around it. Sarah pointed at the far end of the lake. "Is there a buoy out there?" It was too close to shore for a buoy. A red sphere bobbed gently where the water darkened, then another surfaced beside it, then a third, 3 in a line. Marco squinted. Those drift. They weren't drifting. They were spacing themselves evenly. The couple on the dock stood up at the same time and walked to the end. Didn't sit again. Didn't talk. Just stared straight down into the water. Tyler called, "Hey, you guys good?" No response. The red spheres dipped under. The surface went smooth. Jenna whispered, "I don't like this." We started packing. Fast. That was when something brushed my shin again. Not weeds. Something firm, moving sideways. I jumped. Back. Water streamed off my legs. Marco cursed. Something had tugged his foot, hard enough to stagger him. The couple on the dock leaned forward, together. The dock creaked. From the middle of the lake came a slow circular ripple. Wide, growing. Something below was turning. The ranger station lights on the hill flicked off. All of them, at once. The lantern dimmed. Sarah said, very quietly, "Why is the water still warm?" Behind us, reeds rustled along the shoreline. Not wind, footsteps, coming out of the trees. Story 20, the neighborhood garage. Sale that stayed. Open. The signs were everywhere. Handwritten cardboard stapled to telephone poles. Neon poster board taped to stop signs. Arrows spray painted on plywood and leaned against mailboxes. Garage sale. Today only in thick black marker, pointing deeper into a subdivision none of us had driven through before. There were 9 of us in 2 cars, killing time before lunch, talking about thrift finds and joking that maybe we'd finally score something expensive for $5. The neighborhood looked normal enough at first. Ranch houses, trimmed hedges, basketball hoops tilted over cracked driveways, wind chimes clicking lazily on porches. Then we noticed that every single house had a table set up. Not just 1 or 2, every driveway, every lawn, every open garage. Rows of folding tables covered in stuff. Clothes, old toys, kitchenware. Boxes of VHS tapes, stacks of photo albums, not a single homeowner in sight. "That's, weird," Jenna said. Tyler slowed the car. "Maybe they all went inside." We parked near the middle of the street and got out. The air smelled faintly sweet, like cut grass mixed with something metallic underneath. A breeze pushed price tags fluttering on strings, but nothing else moved. Marco picked up a snow globe from a table. No price sticker. He shook it. Nothing fell. No glitter. No fake snow. Just cloudy liquid. Sarah flipped through a rack of jackets. "These feel damp." They were. Cold too, like they'd been stored underground. We spread out, calling half-joking hellos. No one answered. A stroller sat near one driveway with a blanket draped over it. No baby. A grill in another yard was still warm. Someone had left burgers half-cooked, fat frozen in mid-sizzle. Jenna crouched beside a cardboard box and froze. "These are pictures." We gathered around. Polaroids, dozens of them. Different houses, different families, different seasons. But all taken from the street. Front porches, living room windows, backyards, candid shots of people who didn't know they were being photographed. Tyler slowly turned one over. Dates, times, addresses, all on this street. We looked up. The houses around us felt closer now, not physically, but like the space between them had shrunk. A garage door at the far end of the block rolled up, slow, grinding. Inside was empty except for a folding table. On it sat 9 objects, laid out neatly: wallet, sunglasses, car keys, phone charger, hair tie. Each one something one of us was carrying. Sarah checked her pocket. Her charger was gone. Tyler's keys weren't clipped to his belt anymore. Jenna whispered, "We didn't put those there." Behind us, another garage door opened, then another, all the way down the street, each one revealing a table, each table holding items being slowly removed from our hands in bags and pockets without us feeling it happen. Marco backed toward the cars. They're inventorying us. The cars wouldn't unlock. Key fobs dead, dash lights off. The garage doors stopped moving. From inside the houses came footsteps. Lots of them, slow, unhurried, crossing living rooms, climbing stairs, approaching front doors. The price tags tied to the tables fluttered harder even though the wind hadn't picked up. One of them brushed my leg, written in marker, set, incomplete. Across the street, another tag lifted in the breeze and flipped over. Set, complete. A front door clicked open somewhere behind us. Story 21, the boat rental that closed at sundown. We rented 2 pontoon boats because the guy at the marina said the motorboats were already gone and we didn't want to wait until the next morning. 8 of us piled coolers and towels on board while the sun slid low over the water, turning the lake gold and pink and orange. "You'll be back before dark," the attendant said, scribbling something on a clipboard without looking up. "What time do you close?" Jenna asked. He hesitated. "Sundown." "That's like 20 minutes." He nodded. "Plenty." We eased away from the dock, laughing, music low, drinks in cup holders, waving to families packing up kayaks along the shore. The farther out we went, the quieter the lake became. No jet skis, no fishing boats, just ripples and distant birds and the low hum of 2 engines. Marco stood at the front, pointing toward a cluster of buoys near the center. "Those weren't there before." 3 red floats bobbed in a neat triangle. When we drifted closer, a 4th surfaced between them. Jenna frowned. "That's not normal, right?" We circled. The GPS on Tyler's phone showed open water, no markers, no hazards, no restricted zones. We headed back toward shore. The shoreline looked wrong, not gone, shifted. The tree line had stretched longer, straighter, less broken by docks and houses. Sarah squinted. "Where's the marina?" We tried another direction. Same thing. Trees, unbroken. The sun dipped lower. Too fast. Phones lost signal. The water around the boats warmed instead of cooling. Someone leaned over and touched it, pulled their hand back. "Why is it warm?" Behind us, something surfaced. Not a buoy. Too wide, too smooth, then sank again without ripples. The motors sputtered. One died. Then the other. We drifted. The clipboard guy's voice crackled over the radio. "You're late." Tyler grabbed the mic. "We can't find the dock." Static. Then, drift toward the markers. The red floats bobbed closer. None of us remembered steering.